Welcome to the Board Game Network. This is James. I'm going to be explaining how to play this game called The Others, put out by Cool Mini or Not. It plays 2 to 5 players, and it's really competitive cooperative. In other words, it's one player playing the sins, and the other players playing the heroes. And so it's the sins players versus the heroes. So the heroes all win together or lose together against the one player who's playing the sins player. So I have a setup here, and there is a huge amount of variety to this game. Let's just get into the setup. First off, you choose the roles, and so you decide who's going to play the sins player, and then everybody else plays the heroes. And then the second thing you do is you choose a sin. And this game is about the 7 deadly sins. The base game comes with 2 sins. The other ones are available separately. So it comes with pride and sloth. So you choose which one of the sins you want to play for the game. And then you choose the acolytes. The sins player does this. He chooses either the hobos, the nuns, or the doctors. And there's 18 of these. These are tan. And so you pull out which ones of those you're going to play. And then you get the corresponding card here, the hobo, the doctor, or the nun. And you put your apocalypse track there. And so here's the sins player setup. You'll notice the sin has some special ability here. The acolyte has a special ability here. You're going to start with a tentacle on the 0 track of the apocalypse track. You are then going to choose a story, and the story can either be terror based, corruption based, or redemption based. And so here are the different stories. The red ones here are terror. It does suggest for your first game that you play Haven's Last Stand. The reason why is terror is more straightforward than the other two. And so then you also get the corresponding cards. The card color matches the storyboard. And then there's also a final story. Back here that you can play. Then you choose a map. Once you've chosen the story, you flip the storyboard over, and there's a choice of 2 different maps to set up. And I've got one map set up here. And then you need to go through and set all the different things on here, the acolytes, the abominations, there's tokens that you put out. Set it all out exactly, and it gives you the tile numbers here on how they're laid out to help you lay this out correctly, and they need to be oriented the correct way. And then you choose your heroes. There are 7 heroes. Now, if you're playing 2 players, so if you have one hero, that hero is going to play 3. That player is going to play 3 heroes. So there's always going to be either 3 heroes or 4 heroes in play. So if there's 1 hero player, he plays 3 heroes. If there's 2 hero players, they both play 2 each. If there's 3 hero players, they play 1 each. And if there's 4, they play 1 each. And so you look through the different heroes here: Rose, Brad, Leah, Rocco, Morgana, Carl, and Thorley. And you'll notice there are different colors. Those different colors represents different styles of play. The leader, the leader boosts other players. And if you look at the side, it tells you what kind of hero it is. So this one's the leader. Leah is the only leader possible. So that one's a yellow. And they've got different color bases you can stick on the the pieces to help you see which ones are which ones. And so Leah is a leader. She boosts other heroes. There's the fixers, which are the green ones. They resolve crisis. The shooters are blue, and they are ranged heroes. And then the bruisers are the fighters. The red ones are the fighters. And you'll notice up in the upper right, there is something that this hero can do that the other ones can't. So you need to keep aware of that. And then you've got your final preparations, and your final preparations are, you've got upgrade cards here that you're going to shuffle and deal 5 face up. Those are cards that you can add out to your hero, and they give you an ongoing effect for that hero. You are going to take either the Pride deck or the Sloth deck, and the Sins player is going to shuffle those and draw 5 as his opening hand. Each hero gets 2 action counters to go with their hero. The Sins player gets 1 reaction token per player. So the heroes are going to have twice the number of actions as the Sins player has reaction tokens in play. And you're going to put those face up, so the colored side up, and when you've used them, you flip them to the monochrome side. So the way a normal game goes is it goes until the Sins player wins if there are not any more hero characters available to bring back. In other words, what happens is if your hero dies, you get to draw another hero. So since there's 7, if you've got 4 in play, then you can actually have 3 heroes die. But when that 4th one dies and there's not another one to bring out on the board, then the Sins player wins. And the heroes, they just need to complete the mission that they have on their storyboard. Here's the missions. You'll notice here that it's kind of a flow chart. You have to do this first one, and you put a tentacle token up there to keep track of where you're at. But once you've completed that one, you have to choose between one of those 2, and you move your tentacle counter down to one of these 2, whichever one you decide to do as a group. And then you have to complete that one and then move down. And once you've completed all of the missions, then the hero players win. Okay, I've got the board set up now. I've got the acolytes, the abominations, and I've got the leader out here, wherever I rotated this. Yes, right here for the Sins player. That's called the controller. He's called the controller. The storyboard tells you where to put all of these, place them. Now the way this map board works is each hallway is a space until you get to a crosswalk, and once you get to a crosswalk, across the crosswalk is the next space. And then interior spaces like rooms, this one is adjacent to this one, and this room is adjacent to the hallway. So even though this is on 4 tiles, this hallway space here, it's the same hallway space, so it's one space right here. And so that's the way the spaces work. There is this tram thing here that lets you go from this space to this space as a single move, and that's only for heroes. It's not for Sins players. Here's your starting token. That's where all of the heroes start. They come in, and if you die and come back with a new hero, it starts right here. So let's get into how to play this game. First off, you start with the tasks listed on your storyboard. It says start of round, and place the following tokens, each one on a different space. And so this is for the Sins player to do. And each of your storyboards would have a start of round space there that let them do something. So you're just gonna, the Sins player is gonna throw those down in different spaces. Then you determine who the first player is going to be. So you're going to have these in whatever order your players are. And so let's just say, here's what I've chosen. I've chosen Leah, Carl, and the shooter. So I've got this set up as either a 2-player game or a 4-player game. And so let's just have it in this order. And so let's just say Leah's gonna go first. So once she goes, then it becomes Carl's turn, then the shooter's turn. And the Sins player doesn't really have turns. He reacts to the hero's turn. And then the second part of the round is the hero takes their turn, and what they do is they have 2 turn tokens, and so they're going to flip one over when they take their turn. And they can do 2 different things. They can move and they can take an action, and they can do that in any order. But they cannot take an action in the middle of their move. And when you move, you can move to up to 2 adjacent spaces. So we all started here, so let's just say Leah is got the yellow base, and her starting tile has a corruption token on it. Now these tokens here, they affect when you move into them and when you move out of them, but they don't affect when you're standing in the space. There's fire, there's corruption. Here's a corruption one. So these wouldn't really take any kind of damage or any kind of die roll just by standing there. But when Leah decides to move out, there's going to be a corruption check here on Leah. And I'll talk about corruption checks in a little while, so I'm not going to deal with that right now. So she could move 1 space over, 1 space out, and then that would be a movement of 2. Now you do take a wound when you move out of a space that has a monster or as many monsters as there are. You take a single wound. Doesn't matter how many monsters are there. So, but that could be a movement, and then she could take an action. And the action would be either starting a fight or cleansing an area are the 2 different kinds of actions you can do. And to start a fight, you're going to be in a space with another monster unless you're a ranged hero. Then line of sight works for ranged only in hallways, and it goes as far as all the way. So it doesn't matter if there's monsters or heroes in the way. You can see from here to there, and with this all being 1 space, anybody that's in that space you can shoot at. Even if they're standing here, they're still in this space, so you can still shoot at them. Cleansing an area, you can do that for, there's corruption. That's the green swirl here, the tentacle. The nest one is these ones here. You'll notice these, some of these are printed on the board, and if they're printed on the board you cannot get rid of them, but the ones that are tokens that are laid on the board you can cleanse to get rid of. There is fire, which is the yellow one. There is pentagram, which is the red one. And what these do is for the corruption and for the fire, when you move into or you move out of, you have to do a check. For the fire, when you roll a fist, you take a wound. For the corruption, when you roll a tentacle, you're going to take a wound. And the number of tokens here, so when Leah moves from here to here, the Sins player sees that there's 1 tentacle token there, so would roll 1 die, and here's the different sides on the die. If a tentacle shows up, then Leah is going to take 1 corruption. Now there is a hit with a burst, which is a fist with a burst or flames or something coming out of it. And that allows the sins player to roll another die, so they would get another roll. So if they takes a corruption, you are going to move one up on your corruption track. And you're starting with, each person starts with a tentacle marker in the one space of the corruption track. So that's what happens when you move out, but you get the sins player gets one per token. So if there was fire and corruption in the same space, you'd want to roll those separately so that you can know which faces affect on each die roll. The nest ones, that's where the monsters come back. At the end of the round, you get as many monsters back as there are heroes. So if you kill 3 monsters, the sins player can bring, depending on how many heroes are in play, not how many players, how many heroes are in play, you take 1 monster back and you put them on the nest spaces. So if there's a space that has 2 nests, then you can bring 2 monsters back in that space. And they have to be unoccupied nests. So in other words, if there's already a monster there, then that uses up one of the nest spaces. And then the pentagram, what it does is it allows the monster player, the sins player, to roll 1 extra die in any fights per pentagram that's there. So when Leah moves in here, and if she wants to do a cleanse to try to get rid of these tokens, she needs to do a skill check. And to do a skill check, you look at, here's your attributes. The first one is your fighting ability, the second one is your skill ability, and the third one is your defense, how much shielding you have. So you're going to take, she has 3 on the skill check, so she would roll 3 dice. And the eye is a hit. And whenever you're rolling dice, you get 1 extra die for every hero that's in the same space as you. That would not be the case at this point. And you can choose to take a corruption, a single corruption, anytime you roll a dice also. And what that does is it gives you whatever the ability is that's under the space that you move to, and everything to the left that's not covered up. So prior to the die roll, if Leah wanted a better chance at cleansing, she could move this up voluntarily, and this is an extra die. This is an extra shield, so it automatically prevents 1 wound. This is an extra hit, so it actually does 1 extra wound. This is another extra die. This is 2 hits, and this is 1 of your choice on the die. A hit, a skill, armor, and a prevent corruption. Okay, so Leah rolls, and eyes are success on a skill check. There's the armor, does nothing on a skill check. There's the fist, that's a hit in fighting, but it does nothing on a skill check. This prevents corruption, does nothing on the skill check. And this, the faith one, is the best one on there. What that one lets you do is it lets you roll another die and add that to your results. And then once you're done rolling, and if you roll another one, you can get to roll another one, another one, another one, until you don't get faith ones again. And then once you're done with all of your rolls, you are going to change the face of the faith one to any one you want. So if you're doing a skill check, you want that one. So if you rolled 3 skills, that means you get to take 3 tokens off the space you're in, whichever ones you want to take off. So your 2 actions are either fighting or cleansing. I'll talk about fighting in a little bit. The other thing you can do, and this is a free action, it doesn't really count as an action, and you can actually do it in the middle of your move if you want to, is to take a city action. And to do that, every player has one city token. They put this on the city, and then you get to do everything that's on that, after that token, on that city space. So I could have done that before I left, or I can do it on this one, or whichever one I land in. And you can do that regardless of if there's monsters in there or any of that kind of stuff. So your possibilities for these spaces are, you've got the cross that heals you 1 wound. You've got the church symbol that heals you 1 corruption. You've got the +1 token that gives you a +1 action. So it's just like these action tokens, except for when you use them, they're one time, you discard them. And you can save those into future rounds if you want to. This trunk one gives you an upgrade card. And this satellite dish over here, that moves this satellite up to 2 spaces and automatically kills an acolyte or an abomination. No die roll needed. So very nice. And that's all of the different icons. But once this has a token on it, it cannot be used by another player until this token disappears at the end of the round. Then once Leah's done with her turn, the Sins player has the chance to react if they want to, and to do that they have to flip a reaction token over. But remember, they've only got, in this case, would only have 3 reactions for the 6 actions that the players have. So they don't want to react at every turn. And you can only react against the player that just went. You cannot react against another player. And if the player died in the middle of their turn, you do not get to react because there's nothing to react against. You can do essentially what the heroes did. You move up to 2 spaces, and you do it in this order. You move, and then you fight, and you have to fight the current hero. But it does not have to be the monster that just moved. So let's say there's a monster already here, and Leah moved into there. Let's say I want to move this monster 2 spaces, 1, 2, but then there's a monster here that can fight Leah. Then you go through the next player, and look at Carl. Carl has actually 2 different figures. He has the one we put out here, and he has this wolf one. Carl has his special ability that says at the start of the turn you may switch to a wolf form. As a human, you gain +1 defense against corruption to all of your fight rolls. So when you're fighting against a monster, if they roll a corruption, this automatically prevents 1. But that's at the start of your turn, and you put this over so this doesn't affect your wounds or your corruption when you do this. And then you can change the figure if you want to on the board. And the wolf says at the start of your turn you may switch to human form. As a wolf you may move an additional space, so the wolf gets to move faster. I didn't even read you. Leah's special ability is at the start of your first turn each round, give any hero an extra turn token. So Leah could give herself an extra turn, or say, oh, you know what, Brad might need an extra turn. And so you need to keep track of all these there's a lot of special abilities and special things that happen and upgrades that happen. So keep up to date on, keep reviewing that so you don't miss out on things that you could do. And so once all of these are spent, once all of the actions are spent, and the reaction, or the action, the extra action tokens can be saved into future if you want to or not. And you don't skip around turns, you don't pick in any order, you have to go clockwise once you've picked the starting player. And so you go until everybody has taken all of their actions. And then you go back to the storyboard, and it has an end of round procedure. It says raise the apocalypse track by 1. So that goes there. It says reveal apocalypse cards. So, revealing Apocalypse cards, the way you do that is you flip over 2 cards. The Sins player does. The Sins player decides which one he wants to do, and he puts the other one underneath the deck. So this one says, each abomination gains 1 fist in fights. Now these Apocalypse tracks, they stay out. Even if you go to the next one, this card stays out, and you get another card, and you get another card, and you get another card. Or every other one is another card. So 1, 3, and 5 are another cards. And these are other things on here. Like number 2 says, the Sins player may summon an additional monster each round. So instead of bringing back 3 in this case, the Sins player can bring back 4 if you get down there. And so this makes the game harder and harder as the game goes along for the hero player. And remember that the Sins player also has the Sin cards in their hand, and they tell you when you can play them. Like this says start of the hero turn. This says after an abomination is destroyed, after a controller wounds a hero, after a die rolls, start of the hero turn, move up to 2 monsters, 1 space each. So it's kind of like shocker things against the heroes, like, oh, you didn't know I could do this, I did this. And these are up in the Sins player's hands, so the heroes won't know what they are. Then once you've done this, then the Sins player gets to bring back on the board the number of creatures, the number of monsters that died, that's equal to the number of heroes, and they have to be in unoccupied nest spaces. So in this case, where there's 1 nest here and there's 1 monster here, you could not bring it back here. And if there is not enough open nest spaces, they can't bring back. So you wouldn't want to fill up all your nest spaces. You want to leave some available. And then the Sin player draws Sin cards equivalent to 1 card for every altar token that does not have a hero in it. This is an altar token here. This is an altar token here. So in this case, where there are no heroes in there, they're not disrupting the altar ceremony. So the Sin player gets to draw 2 more cards, put them in his hand. There is no limit to the number of these cards in the Sins player hand. So that would be something that the heroes want to be aware of, is that if you don't get in there, then the Sins player gets these extra cards. You're going to flip all of your turn tokens face up, and the action tokens, the reaction tokens, go back to face up. You're going to take the city action cards tokens off and put them back on the heroes. And you're going to remove marked tokens. What's marked tokens? Well, there's these markers. At different times in the game, I'll say mark this, and that just shows that it's been used, and you can't use it again until the mark comes off. Now, I told you that when you move out of a space with a monster, you take 1 hit. Monsters are not allowed to move out of spaces with heroes, so no matter if somebody does something or if they want to leave, they cannot move out. They are so angered at the heroes, they will not leave in a space that has a hero in it. And you always add 1 extra die to any die rolls when you have extra teammates in your space with you. So 1 extra per hero in the same space for all die rolls. Whenever you're fighting, a single hero fights against every monster in the space. And whenever it's the Sins player, he fights with all monsters, he accumulates all the dice against a single hero. And it's whichever hero he's reacting to. So you look at the fight stat on your hero to do a fight. So in this case, Leah has 3 die. You are going to add 1 extra die for every other hero in the same space. You are going to add an extra die if you have the Commissioner, and the Commissioner is this token here. And to pick up these tokens, you just have to move into the space and pick them up. Those are non-player characters. The commissioner gives you a +1 die in fights. The proxy, this one here, the proxy lets you ignore 1 fire and 1 corruption from exploration tokens when you move in and move out. The Raven Corp token is this one here. It gives you +1 to your movement, lets you move a little bit faster. So if you want those, you simply pick them up when you walk into those spaces. And then any other cards, any other upgrades or anything that lets you adjust the number of dice you have, and then that's what you roll. And then you can also choose to move up on your corruption track, and as long as they're not covered, you get whatever's under that space and then everything to the left. And that only works for the one time you move up in your corruption. And then the Sin player, what he does is he totals his fight stats for all of his monsters. They are going to have essentially the same kind of thing where they have a number on here. So his Abomination has a 3, his Controller has a 4, his Avatar has a 7. So he looks on here to determine how many of each monster, how many dice they each roll. He's going to add +1 for each pentagram in the space. He is going to maybe have a start a fight card that helps him out. There are other cards that could affect the Apocalypse card, the Apocalypse track. So in both cases, a fist is a hit. A tentacle is a corruption. And hits to the monster must be greater than or equal to their defense. The defense is the amount of on the armor there. If you do not do at least that many fists, hits, then the monster is unaffected because they do not accumulate over rounds to kill them. You have to kill them in a single turn. So if a hero comes in and fights, another hero comes in and fights, and another hero comes in and fights, they all start over with the full amount of wounds. If a ranged hero is fighting a monster, they will do the shot. And then if the monster still survives, the monster gets to move up to 2 spaces to attack that hero. If they cannot make it within 2 spaces, then they don't move. And remember, they cannot leave a space that already has a hero in it. If the hero takes corruption on the die here, then they're going to move their corruption token up. And if they're maxed out on 7 here, then any additional corruption becomes wounds. And all players start with 5 wounds. And so when they take wounds, they move these wound markers down here over the corruption track spaces, and that prevents any voluntary corruption from giving you that ability. So when the Sins player is corrupting you and moving you up, it actually makes your roll better if you do a voluntary corruption because it gives you more abilities here. And when you're taking corruption, or when you're taking wounds, you get to decide which ones to cover. You can start up at the top. These are better ones, but they're going to take longer to get to. And your very first one should always be the no effect one, because that doesn't do anything. If a player takes 5 wounds, then they're dead. The Sins player does not get to react. You remove the hero, you remove the dashboard, you get rid of any extra turn tokens, any marked tokens, any of these things you get rid of. You get rid of any non-player characters or innocent players. They just go back on the space where the hero was at. Any upgrade cards, any of these that the player has, will go back up here into inventory. So let's say Leah had 2 upgrades. They will go up here back into the inventory. So instead of having 5 here, you have 7. For your turn tokens and your city action tokens, there's no change. So if they've already been played, then they stay out. If they've already been turned over, they stay turned over. If they haven't, then they don't. You choose a new hero from what's left. And that hero starts on the starting space. That hero starts back over with 5 wounds. You start your tentacle in the first space on the corruption track, and then you choose upgrades equivalent to the number that got put back into the upgrade stack, so you can actually pick different ones than the ones that got put up there. So you should end up with 5 when you're done. So the new hero draws the 2 that they like, and if there's no available hero to draw, then the Sins player wins the game. So that's the way you play the others. There's so much flexibility in starting this game with choosing the different sins, with choosing the different, just a big variety of different things. You choose which scenario you want to play, choose which map you want to play. So that's the way you play the game The Others from Cool Mini or Not. And remember that there's more available than what's in the box. So once you get the two sins played, you can go out and buy 5 more sins to play. Make sure you tune into all of the videos here at the Board Game Network so you can keep up to date on how to play games like The Others here at youtube.com/boardgamenetwork.